Well, g'day everybody. I'm not sure how that intro went. We're getting a bit of staggered bit there. Anyway, it could have started late, might not have finished. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to go through all the answers to the questions that have been put to us when we post on Facebook with the big question mark. Okay, I've got a series of questions there, and I did it first about 3 weeks ago. We had some questions then, but I was so busy with managing the race or organising the race that I didn't get to answer those questions. And then we had another opportunity in the last few days, and we got about 17 questions there as well. So this could take a while. But before I get there, I just want to talk about something very interesting. This is the program that we did for the Golden Globe race in 2018. It's a pretty cool book, right? It goes through all the bits and pieces about the race. Okay, so there's the 2018 Golden Globe race program. Very fun. You had to be in Les Sables d'Olonne to get a copy of that. And this is the next program we did for the Golden Globe race in 2022, which finished a few months ago. The same thing again. It's got all sorts of fascinating stuff in there about the entrance and all sorts of things. Really cool. And you had to be in Les Sables d'Olonne to get that copy as well. That was, both of those were in French. Okay. Now for the Ocean Globe race, this is the new program. You may have seen me talk about it before on various occasions when we're doing the web TV with Ada. And this one's a fantastic one. This is the best one we've ever produced. It's 112 pages. It's got lots of really interesting historical articles from interesting authors. Barry Pickthall was instrumental on this. Great photos, all sorts of stuff in there. Okay, and if you're in Southampton at the MDL Marina, Ocean Village, you will have actually got a copy. It's very exciting. Anyway, we're actually going to put it online. It'll be the next opportunity to get a hard copy will be in New Zealand. We're planning a big Whitbread reunion down there as well. And some people, they had such a good time. Some vets had such a good time in Southampton when we put it on there. They're flying down to New Zealand as well. So that promises to be a big deal. And there'll be hard copies in New Zealand. So you'll get it there. But we're talking to Rob. We're going to actually now, in the next, in the days ahead, we will put this whole program online. That's the back cover, that logo. Boom, boom. It'll be online via the website. Now, I don't know exactly when, but you'll be able to, it'll be an electronic book. So you'll be able to flick the pages and read the whole program because there is some really cool articles in there. Anyway, that was a bit of a sideline thing. This is going to take a while now, and I'll try and answer these questions as best I can as we go through. So the first round of questions came in about 3 weeks ago, maybe even a month ago. So some of them may be a little bit out of date, but it doesn't matter. So it's from Joanne. I have two questions. Can you explain how the different legs of the race work? I think I read that the race will not be non-stop. No, it's not. It's 4 legs. We're sailing down to Cape Town now. There'll be a stop over there for a couple of weeks and have various parties, and boats will get serviced again, ready for the next leg to Auckland. So Cape Town to Auckland. There's a big stop over there. It's over Christmas, New Year. Families are flying into New Zealand, have holidays. There'll be a final check on the boats before rounding Cape Horn, all those sorts of things. And that'll set off on January the 14th, sailing to Punta del Este in Uruguay. And then from Uruguay, it's back to the UK. So in Uruguay, again, it'll be a week or so stopover, depending on how fast your boat is. If you're a fast boat, you'll get in earlier. And if you're a slower boat, you'll get in later. Anyway, watch this space. In the GGR, that's the Golden Globe race, sailors dealt with long periods of being alone. In this race, they will be dealing with in close proximity to other people for long periods. Can you talk about the dynamic of getting along in close quarters in a race like this? Well, the best thing that can happen, well, certainly, yes, the human dynamic is going to be a big story of the race. It's too early to pick it yet, but you can be guaranteed there will be some entrants, some of the crew will storm off the boat, fall off the boat, get off the boat. Who knows? And then there'll be last-minute emergency crew drop in and things like that. And that'll happen on every leg. The law of averages suggests that will be the case. There's about 150-odd sailors in each leg of the race. Some have scheduled changeovers. You can change up to about 70% of the crew maximum. So 30% have to have done the leg before. Skippers and so on, the skipper, we don't want the skippers to change. So we try to get the skippers through the whole way. And that's how it works. So yeah, watch this space. It's going to be very interesting to hear the human stories, but they'll come out. And the best thing that can happen on the boat is that there is always an element of challenge there every day, and then they stay focused. Whether that challenge is coping with the weather or racing hard or whatever, and different crews will do different things. I I've done many expeditions where not racing, but small crews going to Antarctica or up the Pacific or wherever. And if you've got a common focus, it works. If you can have fun, it works. If you can talk about your frustrations and your pent up bloody, I hate the way that guy cleans his teeth, or if he burps too loud or farts too often, you got to talk about it and keep it out. You don't want to bottle it up. And I can talk for a fact with Explorer, forming the crew, leading into the start, there were a lot of pressures there because you have self-doubt, you question why you're there, you wonder if it's all worth it, and if you can hold through and push through that and get to the start, as soon as it starts, it's like, wow, here we go, every minute of it was worth it. And every individual have a different take on that, depending on their own life and their own background and how strong they are as a solo individual that can look after themselves in a team, in a group. So you talk about this subject for ages, but we have two doctors on Explorer. One's a medical doctor, a specialist from emergency specialist from, been all over the world. The other's a psych doctor, and she joins for the next 3 legs. So she couldn't do the first leg, hiker, but she'll join, and it's going to be quite funny seeing her take on it, because I've noticed already she'll often sit back and not say much and just observe what's going on. She's a great person, great sailor and all the rest of it as well, but it'll be funny having a psych person on board the boat. So maybe there'll be some good stories there. Jarrett Lowe, why are there so many South Africans in your races recently? Well, there's not that many, but there's plenty. So Jarrett's got a vested interest. He's from Sterner. But anyway, it's really good to see South Africans. And obviously, if the race wasn't going to South Africa, wasn't going to Cape Town, then that might not have been the case. And for the Golden Globe race, we didn't stop there, but we had a film drop there. So all the boats had to come in very close to port. We go out and meet them and interview them and so on. So it was like a stopover. And yes or no, did that encourage Kirsten to enter the race? Did it encourage Jeremy? I think maybe Jeremy, yes. But certainly Kirsten, probably not. I think that was on her agenda anyway. She'd been watching it for so long. And for now, yeah, I think, Jarrett, the reason you're there is because the race is stopping in Cape Town. We're looking forward to that. Ian Harrison, can't wait. This brings back so many memories. Okay, no question. This one in particular, no question. John Russell's, okay, can't wait for this. Will you use a handicap system, or are rankings done on line honours? No, there is a handicap system, and there is line honours as well. But line honours is often the biggest boat, not so much the most money in the OGR case, because we do things to cap the amount of money you can spend. By the way, are you going to have updates every day? Yes, we are. So looking forward to it. Are there photo drops on media gates in this race? This is from Villy. There was going to be one photo drop in Lanzarote in the Canaries, where they're headed now, just to meet up with the boats and interview them. But logistics became challenging because the boats are so much faster this time, and there's so many of them, and we are a small organising team, and we're already under pressure. So it was decided it wasn't a smart move to split the group straight away, because we would have been down there now. In fact, we were due to fly tonight to go to Lanzarote. So that's not happening, and there's no other film gates. The course is open. There's some Southern Ocean restrictions. They've got to stay above certain waypoints, which we'll talk about later. But they're on their way to Cape Town now, non-stop. Kylie, have you and Jane decided if you will be doing some sailing in the OGR? Yes, we have decided, and we're not. It was our intention, serious intention, that Jane and I would have done leg 3, but I set a timeline of about April, May. If we hadn't a partner, a sponsor to help us fund this event, we wouldn't be able to do it, because to replace me, to take 10 people, and I'd have to pay them 80 grand a year. So there's 800,000 euro just to replace me. so I have to stay. So does Jane, and we're not complaining about that. We love what we do, and it's a great event. So and it's our own adventure. But we'll get to sail a boat later. We're going to sail it around the world following the Mini Globe Race fleet. We think. I haven't totally decided. I will in the next month or so. But that's the plan. We'll, when this is all over, we'll jump in the boat and follow the Class Globe 580s, maybe. Okay. John Edward, what is your Don Mac and James Hughes biggest challenge you are facing at the moment with the upcoming OGR? Well, leading into the OGR, it was a time pressure. Amazing. We got caught like the entrance. We all of a sudden, sheesh, we had I've got a whole van load of consignments that we sent over from China that went wrong. It was all merchandise and our shirts and flags and banners and flames, and all the banners we had were all produced in China, and we sent them by train back across, which is an inexpensive way to do it, back across through China and Russia and so on, through Germany and back here. And we missed it there was a hiccup. We got to Germany on time, but then there was a 10, 12-day delay there and more delays, and so we missed it. So we had to buy all new stuff in Southampton, which was a nightmare. Anyway, it looked good there, and with lots of things like that, just logistics. But now, fortunately, we got through that. We're now back in France. Everything's running smoothly, and it's more systematic now. We did the logistics infrastructure working with MDL to get the start up, and it seemed to go okay. So that was our biggest challenge. And some of that's borne out by trying to save money. But anyway, okay. Oh, that's it. That's cool. Now I've got to find the current one, which is going to take me a few minutes. I'm reading this off the phone. If I go back here to Ocean Globe Race, and it's only a couple of days down. When I do this hunt back in post, I realize how much material we actually produce on Facebook and now on YouTube. This is, of course, is going simultaneously on YouTube as well. Our YouTube following will steadily increase because there's a lot of people on YouTube that don't actually get on Facebook, and there's a lot of people that don't get on YouTube or Facebook. But I'm not talking to anyone here because you'll either be watching this or you won't. But just so you know, if you get onto the website and go onto the live section, there's a section there called Day by Day, and that posts all of the social media online on the website. So you don't have to subscribe to Facebook. You don't have to subscribe to YouTube. So if you're talking to your friends and saying, geez, we're having a great time on, watching this and that on Facebook, and they say, oh, I don't do Facebook, sorry, just let them know they can follow it all without being on Facebook or without being on YouTube. Just go to the website Day by Day. It's all there. Okay, so I've now got the questions here. Now I've just got to get to the comments. I think this is working right. Yeah, I think this is the right ones. So I'm just checking. Yeah, it must be. Okay, so we don't. Oh, that's what I don't want. Oh, I might have only done the most relevant. I've got to go into all comments. I've got them all here. John Edward. Hi, John. What are a couple of your biggest challenges? Face it. Oh, the biggest same question. But this week, since the OGR is about human stories, your challenges may have nothing to do with the race. Okay, our biggest challenge right now, this past week, was actually regrouping in France. We had to leave a few behind to do some things there. Jack came over earlier. We took a day to come across. We were going to bring our rib with us. We towed our rib over, but we left it in the UK for when we return in April. So that was a bit easier, but it takes time, drive back on the ferry here. So we were scattered a bit, and now we're regrouping, which is going to be a lot easier. So starting tomorrow, we're there. Normally I'm home doing this, but the internet at home's packed up, so I'm in the office by myself right now. Jane's doing stuff back home. So yeah, that the big move was it, and also giving some time off to the crew. The team, like Lutz, had been working every day for a long time, and Georgie was doing the same, and Rob, and they've all got personal stuff that they go through. So we quickly tried to, give them a few days off and do things. So this week's been a bit crazy, but tomorrow everyone's back at work, and we'll see how it goes. Nicole, loving the race so far. Interested as to how the boats are allocated to the fleets. Looking at the IRC handicaps, there seem to be some boats that are rated way faster than others, e.g. Spirit of Helsinki and in Seoula. Yeah, well, first of all, the classes are defined, and then we don't separate the boats. They just join up on that class depending on what boat they have. So adventure class is designated from 46 feet up to 55 feet. Okay, so you'll see all the boats in there. So you can actually get a Swan 46 and enter the OGR. You need to be pretty quick, so you have a party in the ports, but it's entirely possible. And in fact, the Swan 46 is actually nearly 48 feet long anyway. Long story when you look at the numbers. You don't have to have a Swan. You can have a Baltic. You can have a Grand Soleil. There's any number. You can have a Thingo Lightwave 48, Oyster Lightwave 48, which is a hot IRC boat. I reckon if someone entered a Oyster 48 Lightwave center cockpit, they could cream the whole thing. But anyway, that's another story if they sail well. So there's any number of designs that they can choose. And the way we work that is we use the Swan designs as a benchmark. So if you're going to get a 51 foot something, right, to enter the OGR, it has to be within 20% of the parameters of a Swan 51. In other words, the displacement, the sail area, all those issues, draft, blah, 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 have to be within 20%. So the boats are similar. And then it balances out then with the IRC rating. So you can't get a 51-foot FAR design that was, a lightweight flyer trying to sail against a displacement production boat like the Swan or Baltic or whatever. So they're similar boats. And then the Sayula class, which is where Explorer is 55 feet and onwards sort of thing. So 55 feet to 65 feet. So that's the 57s. You could get a Swan, 59 or 61 or whatever. But the 65 there's a couple of 65s in the race. The 651 is the biggest of the range, and it's got to all be designed before 1988. And they're the two production boat classes. Then in flyer class, it's any of the boats that had previously sailed in the first 3 Whitbread races. Now we're changing that for 2027, and some people, there's a couple. We've got 10 teams now preparing for the 2027 OGR, and one of the teams is quite excited about the fact that we are now we will allow in 27 Whitbread entrants from the first 4 editions of the race, because we looked at that, and even though it goes through to 1985, there wasn't any major design breakthroughs. And when you consider that they'll be under IRC as well as sort of line on us, there's some other boats there that might be available to get involved with the OGR. So that's how we work the classes. IRC rating, that's a sort of bit double Dutch to me. I've never really raced under IRC. I know a lot more about it now than I did a year ago. But it's a handicapping system, and you have a couple of options even then on how you get your IRC rating. And some are faster, because if you've got, your IRC rating is based on, faster boats will be penalised for being so fast. So the smaller boats have a balancing effect. Tries to bring them all down so they're all equal on the course. That's the simplest way the handicapping works. Yusuf, hi Don, thanks for the coverage. Number 1, can you explain the rationale for allowing water makers in the OGR? Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. You could have had water makers in any of the first 3 Whitbread races. Most didn't, but you could have. And also now in these, in this edition of the race, the OGR, the technology was there. It's pretty straightforward, and certainly it's a safety factor. It means you've got more likely to hold more water for longer, and there's a lot of crews there and things like that. So it's not a major distraction from the historical context of the early Whitbread races. Most of the Swans, for instance, they carry a lot of water. We've actually substitute fuel for water on Explorer, but we still carry 800 litres of water, which is enough for the whole crew to get 2 litres a day without, for the whole voyage, without having to worry about water. So number 2, I'm sure you explained this in other videos, so apologies I missed it. Can you explain some background to the different classes in this race, the story behind each one? Or I just did that. One interesting story, Adventure class is named after Adventure, which was a Nicholson 55. It's another boat you could race in the OGR. A Defence Department entry from the UK that they'd bought 6 of those boats for sail training, adventure sail training, and they entered one adventure in the first Whitbread race. Interestingly, we were trying to, many years ago when the world was a more sane place and a lot more peaceful, what happened was the British Navy presented that boat to the Russian Navy, and as a gift some years back. and she was handed over in beautiful condition. And we made some inquiries and made some connections with the Russian Navy about having her compete in the OGR. And it was going down the track, but of course, all of a sudden, the world changed, and we're now at war, which is really sad. So that never happened. The Sayula class was named after Sayula, which was the Swan 65 from Ramon Carlin, Mexican entry, with Butch on board and all that stuff. She won, so it's another really strong name in that first whitbread, and I remember following it really, really well. Every bit of information I could get, I used to subscribe to all the English magazines and stuff, because the Australian ones were giving little snippets, but I used to have them flowing in on the day to read them. Anyway, so that's Sayula class, and Flyer class is obvious because one of my another guy you just know, the way he did it with Musto and the developing of the wet weather gear, and the way he did his training on the boat, and having a Houseman of Holland built beautiful aluminium boat. It was a complete different program, very significant, and of course she ended up winning the race as well. So that's the name of the three classes. How is the IRC calculated? Can you explain it to a non-racer? Not easily, but I'll give you the simplistic version. First of all, there's two ways you can get an IRC certificate. Normally, an event will say you have to have a fully endorsed class certificate. Now, if you get that, you have to pay a very qualified measurer to come and specifically measure your boat. So you have to get all the gear out, you leave some gear on, you put it in its regular place, and then you've got to weigh the boat. And so you've got to lift the boat with special thingos, or put the keel down on scales and all this stuff to weigh the boat. Then you've got to measure certain points on the hull, okay, to make sure you've got all the dimensions and everything correct. Then you've got to measure all the rig, and every sail has to be measured, and it's quite sophisticated. And each boat has to have that done. And so it costs you, a few €1,000 or whatever it is. And then they put it into the magic black box, the computer, and the computer spits out, having absorbed all those parameters, a handicap rating, starting either above or below 1, depending on how fast you are or slow you are, and so on, to let you catch up. If you're a little boat or you're a boat with a small rig, not much sail area, they will give you a better rating. You'll be under the baseline, so that someone that's then got a really big, fast, light boat with huge sail area and all that sort of thing, they'll have a penalty. So it'll be like a 1.3 rating. So then by the time you multiply those things on the actual sailing time on the water, they're meant to balance out and give each one an even rating. So if it worked perfectly and the boats all sailed in the same efficiency, they'd all come within minutes of each other crossing the finish line on the handicap rating. The other way you can do it is, you've got a production boat, like we've got a Swan 57. There's been plenty of Swan 57s that have been measured in the past and spent that kind of money. You can get a standard production boat rating. And all you have to do then is, they know the boat, you answer a questionnaire, have you changed the layout, have you done anything there? And if the boat's the same, then you just work out the mast height and the foredeck dimensions and all this stuff to confirm that it's as the original design was meant to be. And then you measure your sails, which the sailmaker can do, because in Explorer we've got a whole bunch of new sails and we've got all the dimensions. You give them that, and you can get what's called, in layman's language, it's a production boat IRC rating. And that production boat IRC rating is usually never going to be as good as the one that the guy has spent the money to lift the boat out and measure it and weigh it and do all the bits, because they can tweak the rating. They can even recut some sails to give them a better performance. And you can sort of apply for a rating and then look at it and think, I think I can make this rating better if I put this here, or I change my sail wardrobe, or whatever it is. And you can ask to reapply for another rating, and say, oh, bingo, it's a more favorable rating, right? So some people work the ratings, and historically, the way I'd see this, to give an example, Triana in the OGR has really tried to optimize their IRC rating. They want to win on IRC. They're being very competitive, and they know they haven't got the biggest boat. It's a nice boat. And so they're really concentrating on that. From Explorer's perspective, and say if we look at our sister ship, White Shadow, we're both 157s. White Shadow's got one mast. We've got two. We're Kettering. White Shadow went the route of measuring the boat, like weighing the boat and paying someone to come and do this, that, and the other. We don't really care. We don't really care where we are in IRC rating. We just said, oh, give me the standard production one. That'll do. And it only costs us about €320 to work through the club that comes up with the thing. So I don't know whether we got a good rating or a bad rating or whatever it is. But those that are concentrating on it have too. And the unique part about the OGR, and this caused some controversy, and I'm going to write some backstories on the OGR later, because I've got to tell you, there are more than a few boats in the OGR that are really challenged with the retro aspect of the race and lobbied hard, really hard, for me to change a lot of things. And I said, sorry, you got to live with it. And so there's some big backstories there that we'll talk about later on, because it's very interesting indeed. And certainly with the ratings, that we initially said that everyone would have to have would go voluntary IRC certificates. It was a voluntary thing. You didn't even have to go with IRC if you didn't want to, because we didn't care. It was an adventure race. People racing around the world, like it was in the Whitbread. Even though the Whitbread early ones were what's called an IOR handicapping, and that was pretty important. From my perspective as a concept, I wanted people to get out there and just race around the world and have fun. And some were saying, what about handicap? And so, oh, if you want to get an IRC certificate, go get it, right? So that's the way it was for a couple of years. And then 2 years into it, I said, oh, that's not quite right. We've either got to do it or we don't. So I said very clearly that you can, it's going to be compulsory now to have an IRC certificate. But if you want to go the standard production boat rate, you're more than welcome, and you'll get a dispensation. You don't have to get the full-blown IRC measured thing that's going to cost thousands, because you're not going to win with a standard production boat IRC rating. It'll be rubbish. And so that's what we did. And it's very unusual. You never get that in any other event. But the OGR is different. And we didn't want to make people have to spend lots of money if they weren't really interested in peak performance. And I'm quite certain that I better check, but I doubt whether Godspeed would have gone down that route, and some others as well. It's not just us. Some others say, oh, I don't care that much about IRC. We just want to go out and have a blast. So that's a long answer to a short question, okay? But it's the full background of what's going on. So from Jerry, I'm very curious about the communications allowed. It looks like they're able to communicate to more in the OGR, and he's referring to compared to the GGR. If you could summarize, as I'm used to the limited GGR communications. Thank you. So glad you have this to follow again every day. Yeah, well, there is a big difference now. With the Golden Globe race, it's back to 68. Most of the Golden Globe entrants in 68 didn't even have a radio, so they didn't have them. Some didn't have engines. It was a completely different world back then. So we've restricted the GGR heavily. You can only use an HF radio and so on. We've done the same thing for the OGR, in that you can only use freely your HF radio, your single sideband HF radio, to talk to anyone and do whatever you want. There's separate restrictions for weather forecasting, and I won't go there. But anything that any of the entrants can do on the radio, they're able to do that. They can talk to family, friends, if they can get a link, or talk to other boats or whatever. It's all about radios. Okay. Now, the satellite communications on the boat are primarily there for safety and security. Obviously, if someone's in trouble, we need satellite phones to talk to them. So there is Iridium satellite phones. The next one is that we have, as in the GGR, the YB3 tracking system, and also short texting satellite communication devices. So they're good for, you can't do voice on the YB3s, but you can do short texting, which is just as efficient. You can send text back and forwards. It's a hardened unit, got its own battery. It'll last for months on that battery. So it's a fantastic backup for EPIRBs in the life raft, which you would have seen in Tapio. He was communicating with us in the life raft, even without his glasses, and then guessing the buttons to press. So we've got the YB3, but it's primarily for safety and the sat phone. I'll focus on those two first. So the SoundCloud recordings that we do, when we once a week, that's all voice over the Iridium satellite phone. The next thing that happens is, when I was coming up with the concept of this, it's very clear that when you've got a full crew of 10 people, touch wood, there may be injuries on board. And if there are injuries on board, it can be advantageous to have the ability to send photographs to the doctors to show what's going on. Like if someone breaks a leg, they can take a picture of both legs, and you'll see the normal leg and you'll see the swollen leg, and that may help them diagnose it. And that's just one example. It could relate to other, all sorts of medical issues. So I realized very quickly, if for no other reason than safety, once again, we need the ability to send photos. Okay. And then once we did that, okay, if we're going to do photos, we might as well give them a couple a week, right? So we allowed the ability to send 2 photos every week. All right. And there was some reasons for that. We were lobbied from the entrance pretty hard. And also I realized that may be good for media. If I call it the little green man incident, I don't talk about what may happen, but touch wood, say if a spaceship landed beside one of the entrants sailing through the doldrums and a little green man came out, swam over to the boat and got on deck, it's like a wow moment. And if there's a wow moment, then we want to know, and we would love to see a picture of that. And so that's the secondary reason we said, okay, we're going to have pictures, might as well allow a couple of weeks. Through lobbying, that got extended to 3 photos a week. So any of the entrants can send up to 3 photos a week. It is actually mandatory, but we gave a couple of dispensations on that. Mandatory to have a photo transmission ability. Most of them are using an Iridium Go exec to do that, but it's strictly under the control of OGR. Now, what that means is the satellite phone, for instance, they're our SIMs, they're OGR SIMs in their phone, they're sealed in the phone, and the entrants themselves are not supposed to know the number, so they can only use it. We have forensic analysis of the phone numbers and the use of the phone. So anytime that phone is used, we know exactly who was called, and when they were called, or if there was an SMS that went out, we know exactly when. And there's severe penalties for breaching the rules. They're not allowed to use it to ring family and friends. The same with the Iridium Go exec. We put the SIM card in, they're sealed in, so they can't remove them and put a separate SIM in and start communicating. And they can only send photos once a week at a set time, right? Because we just let them turn on and send it. So they're not allowed to turn it on every week, or every day rather, because once they turn it on, they get an open internet link, and it allows the ability of WhatsApp and a few other things. So we have all sorts of controls to minimize that, but there is an element of honor there. And if someone wanted to cheat, they probably could, but they may very well get caught. In fact, there was a case just recently, just breaking on the Facebook, that 2 French sailors in the Figaro challenge have been nailed for inappropriate use of communications, and one's been disqualified and the other, and this could be all sorts of things because it does happen. But anyway, honor is a big thing in the OGR. So we have controls on all of those things. They can't just be freely used. Now, the next thing that happened is, after about some serious consideration, we looked at the issue of video, and we thought, okay, everyone's screaming at me, we need it. We need video opportunities from the boats. We will never, ever, as long as I'm alive, touch wood, be having any live video or live sessions off the boat. That'll never happen anywhere. But we have allowed entrants, if they want to do the processes, to have up to 3 minutes of store and forward video every week. So to do that, they take their video, they capture the file, and they send it via satellite to us, and then we take a copy and we send a copy to the teams. At the moment, the only entrants that have got that ability are Evrika and Translated and Penjuic and Triana. That's it. But from Cape Town onwards, Neptune are going to install a system, so there'll be Neptune, and Penjuic is on a special dispensation until Cape Town, and unless Marie decides to install our controllable Starlink, because they're using Starlink, Evrika's using Certus. If it's not the controlled OGR Starlink, there's a special process we use for that. Then she may lose her Starlink. So we have very tight controls on that, and basically, using a Starlink, we've got to use an OGR controllable router that's secured into the unit. They only get to turn it on once a week to download a one-way file. The file comes off with Starlink, goes straight to us. That's it. There's no traffic coming back the other way. And then once that's done, it's shut off again, and that's it. So there are serious controls on satellite communications. Again, a long answer to a short question, but we monitor it so it can't be used. We've got it there primarily for safety. But in the case of video, we're just playing with that and just see how it goes. But that'll carry on for the rest of this race, and whether we allow it for 2027 or restrict it further or drop it completely, whatever, but it'll never be greater than 3 minutes video and up to 3 photos a week. Boy, I'm running out of talking. Okay, so next one. Very curious about it. We've got that. Warren. Oh, he sailed on adventure class. Yeah, talking about the steering. So you can read about that. Why do you think there are some communications glitches? They are 10 to 8 crew, unlike GGRs. Just once. Warren was just asking about communication glitches. Certainly, it's kind of interesting because we give each of the entrants an opportunity to send up to 4 tweets a day. And we give them 2 or 3 pictures a week, and we give them the SoundCloud, this, that, and the other. But now some have even challenged to try and get 4 tweets a day out. You get 1 a day, and they say, "Oh, we're okay," or whatever it is, because it's very distracting when they have to stop what they're doing. It's sailing, navigating. Focused on what they do. They've got to stop and then talk to us to get comms out, and it's completely different. Leading into the race, everyone wanted everything. It's, "Hey, you got to give us this video. We want to use the phone." Da, 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 da. And now they're struggling just to do a tweet. But anyway, that's life. So the glitches, the Iridium satellite phones are never perfect. They're pretty good. But if you're following the SoundClouds, we have to edit it. Most of them are dropping out at least once during the call. Some of them 3 times. So we have to chop them and join them together. But it's a good safety tool. Okay, so the next one. Okay, from Nicole. Hey, can you explain a little bit more about the Canaries inshore rounding mark? No, that was cancelled. We didn't do that. You may have seen that in the notice of race, but it was cancelled. Too hard for the logistics. Kaylee, this might seem like a silly question, but when they sail so close together, are they allowed to chat to each other? Absolutely. There's been quite a few sailing close enough to see each other out on the course, which is really great for the people sailing because it's just such a good incentive to have someone in front of you and you go and try and catch them. And it's just nice to see something, out there. They'd be watching every 5 minutes. Oh, they're still there. Relative bearing, blah, blah, blah. But then they're able to talk on the VHF radio, which is a line of sight radio, and a few already have been. They've confirmed that on their SoundClouds. But every day, twice a day, there's a HF radio, single sideband radio chat session, and it's a time and frequency that is open, and any of the entrants can come on and just chat between themselves on the radio. And some of them are, some of them aren't. I think what we'll see is that becomes more relevant as they get a bit further into the adventure. And certainly in the Southern Ocean, we'll be encouraging it because it's a very interesting safety aid as well. So they can talk to each other as much as they want and say whatever they want. John, might be a good time to explain the track on Vector Made Good is not speed over the ground, what the difference is. Explains why a boat might show slower speed. Okay, so the best thing to do here, I'm not going to give you a lesson on trigonometry, but if I was to say, I'm watching the screen here, if there's a point there just above my head, okay, and there's a point here by the Plastimo logo. If you draw a straight line between my head and the thing, if that was the course you needed to sail, like that, and the boat is moving at say 5 knots true boat speed through the water, forget about course over the ground because they don't have GPS and they're swimming through the water. If it's going at 5 knots that way, in exactly the same direction towards that point, then the vector made good, which is the course made good, or the velocity made good, which is the speed, towards that point would be the same. Okay, so the speed made good, which is velocity made good, right? Because you're going in that direction, which is the course made good, are both exactly the same. If the boat's going 5 knots through the water, you're going to see VMG of 5 knots, and the vector made good is exactly the same course. The direction's the same. Right, now, if the wind is coming from this way and the boat can't go that way, and it's got to tack out here and then tack back there, right? It means that when they're tacking away in this direction, if you were to measure the speed, so if I go in this direction to that point there, he could have been making 5 knots in that direction. But if I draw a line down 90 degrees to the course, in that 5 knots, 5 in the hour, I've only done about 2.5 miles towards this course here. So that 2.5 miles is only relating to 2.5 knots. So even though the boat's sailing out here at 5 knots, right, it will show that their velocity made good towards the vector, towards this point, is only 2.5 knots. So you'd see the boat moving really fast out here, but the boat speed would be listed as 2.5 knots. That's all, not 5 knots, because they're not doing 5 knots towards the thing. And if for whatever reason, there's sometimes you'll see a negative course. That could be a glitch, a negative speed. That could be a glitch, but they might actually be sailing away from the mark. And in that case, the thing is, so that's, and I don't want to get into technicalities here. The best thing you can do if you want defined answers is to get onto YouTube and just do a search for velocity made good, vector made good. There's all sorts of diagrams and videos and all sorts of things there that'll better explain it better than I could ever do here verbally in this section. So hope that makes sense. John Russell, hi Don, great to have you. Q&A. Do the crews receive any information on the position of other boats? No, they don't. We don't give them any position of other boats, but certainly they could actually talk to any ship. And if the ship, for instance, this is the only time they can do this, if the ship had internet, most of them do, and the guy on the bridge, so say Maiden saying, hey, g'day, boys. Hey, listen, have you got internet? And the bridge officer comes back and says, yep, we sure do. Oh, could you get online and look at the OGR website and get onto the tracker and give me the exact position of each of the entrants, right? And the guy says, yeah, sure, I'll do that, because he thinks that Marie and Penjuic are heroes anyway. If he gets online and gives that information across, Marie's got it. It's completely legal, because the ships at sea, they've traditionally forever given any information that's requested. Now, if Marie got a radio patch to someone on shore and asked us, hey, can you get online, look at the tracker and tell me the positions? If she received that information in latitude and longitude, it would be illegal. She'd be penalized. But they can give a range and bearing from her to other entrants. In other words, if the Spirit of Quip is 150 miles northwest or northwest of Penjuic, someone could give them that information. Okay, that's completely legal. So you can do relative positions. The reason we do that is if someone got onto the system and was getting daily updates of everyone's position, latitude and longitude every day, they wouldn't have to use a sextant to celestial navigate. And that's exactly what was happening in the original GGR. And we had to change the rules halfway through the course, because it was getting a bit of a joke. People weren't navigating; they were getting their info off the actual tracker that then the radio operators on shore were getting and relaying to the boats, and so they knew exactly where they were every day. So that's part of the reason there. But we don't give them positions. When they get on the chat hour, right, they talk between themselves. They could voluntarily give each other positions, but whether they do or not, because that could be tactical. I remember one classic case where I think it was Flyer heading towards, on the second leg, heading towards New Zealand, was speaking regularly with Peter Blake on Steinlager. I forget which one it was. And there was a interaction and said he wanted to know where he was. He said, look, I'll do it, but it's going to cost you a crate of champagne, and he agreed, or something like that. So I had to give him a crate of champagne later on. But anyway, so it's up to the entrants to work that out. We don't give them any positions at all. So why do all the boats have an orange or yellow stripe on the mainsail? And do you remember seeing it in other races? We were right into safety, even though the boats are fully crewed this time. That started with our the Gold Globe race, as solo sailors. We do a lot of things. We put colour patches on the sails. We put them on the deck. We make them have a specific type of radar reflector. They've got to have radar transponders, which increase the echo or signal from a boat if a radar hits it. A lot of things for solo sailing, for collisions. And I looked at it when it came down to fully crewed, and I thought, why not? It's the same thing. You have a couple of people on watch, in bad weather, and look what happened on the first night. There's fog, very poor visibility. So it's an anti-collision requirement, and we require, I think it's 3 or 4 square meters of high-vis fluoro patch on the mainsail and the mizzen, if you've got it. Certainly traditional ocean racing on storm jibs and so on, they've got to be high-vis orange, or because in storms and you're down to a storm jib, you want to be seen if someone's looking for you or whatever. So it's all about visibility and trying to stop collisions. Nearly finished, 2 to go, I think. Lauren, how do you allocate the boat numbers on the hulls? E.g. Explorer is number 28. Oh, that was easy. I was once a little boy. I then became a teenager, and I see the world as a teenager. And then I got a bit older, and I see the world as a young 20-year-old or something. And then by the time I got to 28, everything stopped, and I still see the world as a 28-year-old. So I got married then anyway. Since separated, but that's a long story. So I just do what I do. And so my desire was to have 28, and basically As long as no one else had it, I can get 28. We have 2-digit numbers. That's maximum. So you can't have 100, but you could go up to 99. And we let the entrants choose that number themselves. And they always have a pet reason and a pet story. There was one guy in the GGR. He wanted 13. He was a mountain climber. It didn't work for him. He retired. In the Canaries, and then anyway, so it goes. 13 wasn't a lucky number for people on boats. Okay. Can all the sailors, one from All Eighth, can all the sailors disembark at each stage, or do they continue on for the next leg and have to stay on board like in the GGR? No, they can swap up to 70% of the crews at any time at any leg. So we leave 30% on board just to make sure there's previous experience. Interestingly, in the 73 Whitbread race, Adventure, again, the Navy entry, they swapped all their crews on every leg of the race. So they were completely new getting on board. But they had 6 of those boats, and so 5 were left in the UK, and they did lots of training on the boats, which were identical, absolutely identical. But to get the maximum number of people in the race, then it was their plan, but we didn't want to do that. We didn't think it was the safest thing to do. All the crews have to have qualifiers to go on board, and you don't have to have sailed on the boat before, but you have to have a minimum of 1,500 nautical miles to get on any boat without having sailed on it before. And we do give some dispensations. I was just speaking to Ryder today. We're sponsoring on Explorer the youth crew, and Ryder's a 6'4" 17-year-old, right? He's a big guy, very prominent, very good sailor, comes from a sailing family, interesting guy. So he's too young. He couldn't be there, but we do give dispensations for various things through the fleet if we think it's appropriate. So there's different options. I'm quickly going to scroll through the questions here, the comments from, I'll start at the top, from people that are watching this. I can't get to the YouTube comments. It's only the Facebook comments. And just on that, if you're still watching this on YouTube, the next round of questions we get will actually be posted on YouTube. So we'll do a short video clip. It'll be up there. So right, our YouTubers, this is your chance. If you want to ask me any questions, then you put the questions in the comments on the YouTube. And then any Facebookers, because you'll see the questions come up, but we won't respond to any comments on those questions. They're only for YouTube questions. Okay, so we're going to alternate. So these ones are Facebook questions and answers, and then the next one will be YouTube. Paul, good morning, Paul. G'day, Ada. Hope you're having a good ride going down to Brest. And good morning from Ireland. To get greetings from them. Oh, that's Prince Edward Island. Ooh, another GGA. Prince Edward Island was the place where Kirsten did her refit on her boat, which was an amazing story. She won the race. It's a great story. And that whole island's gone nuts over sailing now, and it's really cool. Anyway, Andrea, sorry if this has been asked already. If the boats arrive in Cape Town after the start, daytime for the next leg, how long do they have before they start the next leg of the race? So what happens is, in the notice of race, you're supposed to arrive at least 4 hours before the restart. Otherwise, you may be out of the race. If you do arrive, say 5 hours before the restart, you have to stay. I'd have to look. I think it's 3 days. You have to stop for a minimum of 3 or 4 days, but the clock keeps running, and then we allow you to take off. So this brings up a whole interesting issue on how do we come up with the times for the legs. And we did that because looking now, I hope they get there in time, but it could be tight. We'll wait and see. We asked all the entrants to give us their best predictions on individual sailing times. Because you can do computer routing programs based on historical weather, the performance of the boat. And when we got all the times from all the entrants, some of them took a long time to get to us, we absorbed all that. We looked at the previous times of Whitbread entrants in the 73 races, even though we know the weather's changed. And we came up with the times, which should be reasonable, but any given leg could be a bit of a challenge. So we'll have to wait and see. If it was a proper disaster and we had a whole bunch of boats that were hooked up in the South Atlantic High, we'll address that at the time. One thing I'll just drop in here, and I won't say anything other than talk about history. And it's something that this is a historical, not a recreation, but it's all about the Whitbread. And if you are still watching this after all this time, you're getting some interesting news here that you probably didn't know about. Leg 4 of the first Whitbread in 73 did a staggered start. In other words, the relative performance real time on the water was averaged over the previous 3 legs. So once you have an average speed of each of the boats, what they did is they restarted the boats in 2 days apart. They did group here, group there, boom, boom. And the idea of that was to bunch the fleet up at the end, so that when the boats arrive in port at the conclusion of the race, they're a little bit closer together. So you're not waiting for Godspeed to come, sort of 2 weeks to 3 weeks later. That means that the people can stick around, have a bigger party together. You don't have to go away and then come back for the prize giving and things like that. So wasn't that interesting? That was really interesting in 1973. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. I think we'll be making a few announcements about the course going forward when we get to Cape Town, and we'll see how it goes. So, Frederick, g'day, Frederick. Sally, Godspeed is winning on the fundameter for sure. Morning from Ireland. Is there a reason why the 80-foot whitbread maxis of the 80s didn't enter? Yes, absolutely. In fact, those that know the history of the OGR will remember that we had what's called a classic challenge. This is a really good question. We were lobbied after we announced the race. You got no idea the number of people that said they were going to enter. It was crazy. I mean, we restricted the fleet to 30 entrants or whatever, and I thought we're going to get 40 entries, 45 entries. Everyone wanted in. The reality then kicks in, and it gets a bit harder than you think to get to the start line. The complication for this edition, without question, was COVID and the war in the Ukraine. Both of those impacted a lot of the potential funding for some of the entrants. If we just look at COVID, I am supremely confident. If it wasn't for COVID, we would have had about 25 entrants in the OGR right now. Anyway, it is tough to get there. So about a year after the start, I'm completely lobbied all the time by people with Volvo 60s, Whitbread 60s, Maxis, all this stuff. We want in, we want to get it. Don't be so cruel, da da da. And for me, as the founder of the race and coming up with the concept, it was really challenging because I thought, shit, we've already got, we at that stage we had about 18 entrants in the flyer class and cellular and adventure class, and now we want to put in the maxis and stuff and relive the history of that side of it. And I spoke to quite a few people in the media. I spoke to some of the existing entrants that had entered the race, and in the end, I decided to open it with the express support of many people with those boats that said, "Yep, we're going to be there. We're going to be there. Don't you worry about that. We're going to be there." And so I just pulled my finger out and said, "Bugger it. Okay, we'll do a classic challenge. We will let the Maxis come in. We will let the Whitbread 60s come in, and any Volvo 60s, and we'll show in the fleet the whole story of all the Whitbread. It wasn't going to roll over to the Volvo, but as long as it was Whitbread, which went right up to Steinlager 2 and Lion New Zealand and Ceramco New Zealand, all those boats, and there's a lot of them out there. We said, there you go, boys, go for it." And that started about a year of the most amazing conversations. It was just incredible. Yep, we got this. Appointed managers going to do this, going to do that. A year later, no one had entered. No one had the. I don't know. I've got to be careful what I say here. No one entered, and it was just getting on to be a bit of a joke. And so at that point, I thought, this is crazy. At best, we're probably going to get 1 or 2 entries. And so I read the market completely wrong. And all those people that are talking to me realized that it ain't as easy as it looks. And also the conversations were interesting too, because it was just like amazing. Everyone that was in the flyer class and adventure class and cellular class were just a different type of person. They were just this whole group of people that were astronomically different than the people with the Volvo 60s and the Whitbread 60s and all this sort of stuff. It was like, they were just like, wow. And in the end, I said, bugger it, go away. And so we canned it. So that's why. And boy, you're getting some of the good background stories on this now. WPS, hi Don and team, love this stuff. Don't miss a day of the GGR before. Thanks a lot. Are you sailing the last neg? No, I mentioned that in the question. Can't do it, but I'll still go sailing. And Jose, hi everybody, enjoy the show. Cool, from Caracas. I like Portugal. It's a nice place. Enjoy from Horta. Oh boy, fantastic to start. Southampton. Brian, Sally Hancock, you have it right as always. It sounds like a family bet there, and Brian may not have won. I won't go there. All right, that's it. So I'll bugger off. Cheapers, 54 minutes. Anyway, we'll see. Happy to do it. We'll pretty much have a Q&A session every week to give an opportunity, and it usually comes up every Friday. So we'll see you then. Thanks a lot.